Attorneys table test 1, 2. Attorneys table test 1, 2. Jerry box test 1, 2. Podium mic test 1, 2. Approach mic test 1, 2.
Mr. Mando, I believe it's time for you to call your next witness.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. We call Sheriff Marvin Lipper.
Mr. Chairman, is the rule of vote regarding witnesses still vote?
Yeah, the rule, if there are any persons in the courtroom who may be witnesses, you need to step out during the course of the hearing. And if the Judge Allred, if you should see anybody, or Ms. Bando see anybody that may be a witness, let me know and I'll remind them. Sheriff, come on around. If you would, sir, raise your right hand and be sworn. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, sir.
Take a seat there, sir.
Good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning, sir.
Could you state your full name for the record, please?
Marvin, M-A-R-V-I-N, Lipford, L-I-P-F-I-R-D.
How are you employed?
I'm the sheriff of Harlan County.
How long have you served in that capacity?
I took office January 1, 2007,
When does your term expire?
2014, December 2014.
Could you briefly outline your career in law enforcement?
I began my career as a reserve deputy, reserve special deputy, Knox County, Tennessee, Knox County Sheriff's Office. I moved back home, worked at the detention center in Harlan for a little while, and worked at several different agencies in the county. I've got just a little over 20 years experience.
In law enforcement?
Yes, sir.
Sheriff, are you familiar with a case that was handled in the Harlan Circuit Court, Commonwealth of Kentucky versus Dr. V and Dr. Lalani, who were accused of drug trafficking out of their offices in Nashville, Tennessee, and dispensing pills in Harlan County?
Yes, sir.
Was your office involved in that, in the investigation of those charges?
Yes, sir. We were a primary investigating agency.
Right. At some point, Sheriff, were you involved in and present when discussions about a plea agreement for the two doctors was discussed?
Yes, sir. Mr. Henry Johnson's office.
Who was present?
At that time, Henry Johnson and I were present. Lowell Lundy was on his way, who was the one of the attorneys that was hired by the lawyers from Nashville. And Lowell had not made it yet, and then Judge Allred came in.
And we know that the plea was entered on January 11th of 2010. If we know that date, can you kind of pinpoint when this meeting in Judge Johnson, in Mr. Johnson's office, took place approximately?
Probably November, December, in that range, maybe October. It was the latter part of the year.
And can you tell us what was said by Judge Allred, Mr. Johnson, and yourself during the course of that meeting in Mr. Johnson's office?
We just, Henry and I were sitting there, and Mary Hampton, who was employed by Mr. Johnson, came back and said that Judge Allred was here, and Henry said, send him on back, and Judge Allred came in, and you know, we small talked, just how's everybody doing, stuff like that, and he said what had happened. Henry had called the judge and informed him that we were probably going to make a deal, and which is not uncommon, you know, courtesy to let the judge know what's going on. And you know, Judge Allred came in, you know, everything was very cordial, and he basically just said he's not going to accept any plea that involves them leaving here with any money, that they would leave Harlan County, should I say, broke, or he would dismiss the charges for lack of jurisdiction.
Did you have any input or reaction to that?
I was a little aggravated, but I didn't say much of anything. I mean, the judge wasn't out of line or anything. He just, he was cordial about it. He said, that's just a matter of fact the way it is.
Did Henry Johnson say anything?
I don't really remember it. It kind of surprised me, and at that point I started thinking, well, I was pushing for a felony plea, and I felt as though we had enough to get a felony plea because I wanted the doctor's license taken, and that was something that Henry, I, and Lowell were going to hash out, and I knew that when we threw that in Lowell's lap that there was going to be no felony plea. There was no way they would plead to a felony and surrender all their money.
Mm-hmm. And what was the amount of the money that was at issue at that point when this discussion with Judge Allred and Mr. Johnson took place?
I think their bond originally was set at total, both together, was like $1.2 million. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, $200,000 of it was given back for them to pay some attorney fees or pay something. And it was $1 million, basically.
And so what happened next after Judge Allred made the statement that he didn't think the doctor should be leaving Harlan County with any money?
Like I said, I was just agitated. Basically, Henry, I think Henry said something along the lines of, what are we going to do with it? And, you know, part of it was to be used as a forfeiture. Half was going to be a forfeiture to the sheriff's office, and the other half was to be made to a donation to the county to be used for, you know, like a charitable organizations and I don't remember at that time if a water park issue came up, but later on the water park issue came up that it was going to be used to fund the water park.
You mentioned this water park. How did that come up, and did that come up before the plea agreement on January the 11th of 2010?
I believe it may have. I'm pretty sure it did. I'm sure at one point Judge Allred and I had spoke about it, and some people in the public had spoke about it. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that it did. I can't say 100% certainty, but I'm rather sure that it did.
And were you present when the plea agreement was entered and was discussed in circuit court on January 11th?
Yes, sir. It's a standard practice in Harlan Circuit Court. A lot of law enforcement officers in the county complain when they say the Commonwealth Attorney deals cases away, and one of the things Judge Allred did when he first took office was, you know, he'd have officers complain, why did they do this, why did they do that? And if you have a case that's played out, you have to sign the plea agreement. I mean, you're not signing saying that you necessarily agree with it. You just sign it saying that you've seen it. That way, when you know 6 months later, if you go back to the Judge Allred and say, why'd you let this happen in your court? There's the plea agreement. You knew what happened in this court. And but yes, I was there. It's standard practice that we were there to sign off the plea agreements.
And what do you recall? Tell us what you recall being said by the attorneys and by the judge at that hearing.
Well, they just were back and forth talking normal attorney stuff, and during the final phase of it, after everybody signed everything, the judge read the order, or read the plea agreement, and basically said that $500,000 would be forfeited to the Harlan County Sheriff's Office, with 15% per statute going to the Commonwealth Attorney. And then, well, which I'm not sure if he mentioned 15% to the Commonwealth Attorney, but that's the way it's broke down in Kentucky. And then the other $500,000 was to be donated to the County of Harlan, and it would be given to the Harlan County Fiscal Court, but the control of the money would be under the direction of the Harlan County Circuit Judge. And
was the purpose of that money that was going to be donated, the $500,000, was that to alleviate drug abuse in Harlan County?
Yes, sir, from my understanding.
Were all those terms specifically discussed in this hearing, as you recall?
I believe some may have been, but that's so long ago, without actually sitting and looking at it, I couldn't tell you.
What did Judge Allred do at the conclusion of the hearing?
I mean, I guess he just accepted the plea like he normally would, and that was pretty much the extent of it. I left right after it was over and didn't think much else about it.
All right. And at that point in time, best of your recollection, had there been any discussion about this water park and the money, the $500,000 was going to be donated, being used for the water park? There
was different discussions. At one point, it was discussed that some of the money would go to like charitable organizations like the Harlan County Drug Court Program, which is a real good program, the Hope Center, different charitable organizations. Judge Joe Grisham had brought it to me that he thought that an organization that I co-founded, a chaplain program, should receive funds out of it because they help the kids and stuff, and drug court workers go down to their buildings and volunteer and stuff. And it was just back and forth. And when Joe had mentioned that to me, I told him that I didn't think that would fly, that Judge Allred had the say-so over what it could be used for. And he said, well, it's county money. And I said, well, that's between you and Judge Allred. And, then I mentioned to Judge Allred that on one occasion we passed all the time, and we used to see each other on and off all the time. Mentioned to him that, that was something that was tossed out there. And he said, no, Sheriff, he said, we're gonna probably put a water park down, if we can get the county to give the land at 5th Street in Rio Vista, which is a community outside of the city of Harlan. And they own a huge piece of land down there. It would actually been good for something like that. But, I'd mentioned to him what Joe had said about the different organizations getting like pieces of the pie, so to speak. And he said that if you want to give your chaplain something, that can come out of your forfeiture. And I said, I can't do that. There's no way to do that by statute. And that was, there was no arguing over it. I mean, the judge was cordial about it.
Was there ever any question during these discussions as to who ultimately had the authority or approval on this money and where it was going to be spent?
In a Harlan fiscal court meeting, it was made clear that it was Judge Allred, but Judge Allred and I never had discussions over who had control and who didn't have control. I knew he had control of it.
And were you present at the Harlan County Fiscal Court meeting on January 19th of 2010?
Yes, sir.
Was the issue of the $500,000 donation from the doctors to the fiscal court the subject of discussion at that meeting?
Yeah, it began. Yes, sir, it did.
What do you recall, did Judge Allred speak at that meeting?
Yes, he did.
What do you recall Judge Allred saying about the money?
He didn't say anything at first. Judge Grisham had came to me and some of the people that volunteer as chaplains for us and said that he was going to make a motion or get the fiscal court to make a motion to start divvying up the $500,000. And when Judge Grisham said that he started to make a motion. There's different charitable organizations. He said, for instance, the chaplain program. The judge already jumped up and made it clear that he said that absolutely not. I'll veto any thing that has, or how do you say it? I'll veto any action over this money, basically. I can't remember verbatim what he said, but he made it clear that he had control of the money because David Kennedy, who is a magistrate in District 3 in Harlan County, said, so what you're saying is basically you have control of the money, that we have to write the check, but you have control of the money. And he said, yes, that's absolutely right, and I'll veto anything that has anything to do with giving the money away. And basically, that was pretty much it. In gist, that was pretty much it. I can't remember everything that was said.
In your position as sheriff, had you ever seen the sitting circuit court judge appear before the fiscal court and talk about how money would be spent in a case like this?
No, sir, but we've never really had a case like this either.
Right. Sheriff, I'd like to show you an exhibit. It's previously been entered in this matter. This is exhibit number 6, Judge. It's an amended order. It was entered on March 11th of 2010. Take a second and review that, Sheriff.
Yes, sir.
Have you seen that order before?
Yes, sir.
Is that order accurate in terms of the facts?
What happened in court that day?
No. Was where it said in there that get the exact language so I can be specific.
Yes, sir.
Where it says in here that the language was inadvertently put in this order by counsel to the defendants in the common attorney's office. It was neither solicited nor approved by this judge. Is that accurate?
No, sir.
Why not?
I was in court. That's what I was saying. I was in court the day that it was made clear, and then in the fiscal court meeting, it was made clear that the judge already had the final say-so or how the money was spent. It was ran through the fiscal court, and then he had to say so how they had to spend it.
You familiar with an investigation that was done by your office into an allegation that drugs were being sold by Judge Executive Grisham out of his office?
They were not being sold. I mean, we conducted an investigation. He was not accused of selling drugs out of his office.
My apologies.
An informant told us that she would trade sexual favors for pills out of his office.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff. Tell us how that all started and how the investigation unfolded.
A couple of my detectives were working as informants. She was making drug buys in the Kaywood community, which is south of the city of Harlan in Harlan County. They drove by a nicer area of Harlan, in Harlan, in that area of Harlan, and she said, "I can get that guy." And my detectives looked back, told me they looked back to say,
Objection, hearsay.
"Yes."
Sustained.
If you could, Sheriff, just tell us about what you know about the investigation and how it unfolded.
They called me. The detectives called me. They said Miss Hensley's informed us that she can.
Hearsay.
All right, let me see if I can
He's
rephrase
correct. Sustained.
it. Sheriff,
Yes, sir.
with regard to this investigation, did your office conduct one?
Yes, sir.
And who was involved in that investigation?
Detective Silas Whitehead, Detective Jason Snelling, and at the beginning, Detective Day was with Detective Whitehead when it first came to knowledge.
And I take it that the investigation went forward based upon an allegation that Ms. Hensley had made, correct?
Correct.
And your officers then looked into it, correct?
Yes, sir.
Objection, lead.
Sustained.
Tell me what devices, and tell us what devices or tools your office used as part of the investigation.
We used a purse that has a video camera with an audio system attached with it, and we used a separate audio recorder as a backup if the video system went down, or if the audio went down, we still had the video audio system. And we would search the informant's vehicle. There was always 2 detectives present, a minimum of 2, and we would send them to wherever we were going. We would follow them, and if they had to go into like a public building like that, someone else would pick the informant up. In other words, someone else would watch them out of the vehicle. They would watch, for instance, Detective A would watch the informant go from the car to the building. Detective B would be standing in the building, watch them enter the door, and watch them go into, let's say, the office or the bathroom, or wherever it was going to be conducted at, and which was Judge Grishop's office.
Did you personally review this evidence?
Yes, sir.
And what did you see?
Well, the first video was not real good, but what she said happened at first made some sense, because she said at one point Judge Grishop got up, and in the video you can see he got up, touched her on the leg, and you couldn't tell if it was as of, say, 1 minute, or you didn't really know what he was doing. And just a minute or 2 after that, I think she made the comment in that video, "Is this for me?" And that's when she started like ruffling like a cellophane, like on a cigarette pack. And when we got through with that, we got back to her house, which I wasn't on. I didn't go back to the house with him on that one, I don't think. She gave him the pills, and she had pills, but there was no drug talk on the video. There was no drug talk on any audio recordings. There was no clear hand-to-hand exchange of drugs at the judge's office.
Did you at some point advise the Commonwealth Attorney about the investigation?
Yes, I did.
Tell us about that.
I informed him what we had and what the accusation that was made, and he told me I needed to try an outside agency to come in, to get them to come in and take it over. And he thought it was best to contact the Attorney General's office, and we actually set an appointment up with the Attorney General. They informed me to get a transaction first, then they would come in and assist us. And I took the Attorney General everything we had on that first transaction, and they ended up assigning a detective to assist us on that, to show there was, we're completely unbiased. But during that time, we ended up setting a meeting up with Assistant U.S. Attorney Pat Malloy in London, Kentucky, to see if the feds were interested in it. And he said that there would be no federal statutes that they could tell that were violated, really, and that they wouldn't be interested in it. And then we went with the Attorney General's office from there, and they assisted us on the next 2 transactions.
Did you ever have questions about Ms. Hensley's credibility?
At first, I didn't.
Why?
Because she had made a few buys that were really solid buys, and she was established by pretty much everybody's standards. I mean, that's used in our part of the state, and I had no reason to at first. And then when we started watching the video, and in the debrief, she would say something happened, and you're looking at the video and you see that didn't happen. And that started raising some issues of credibility. That was toward the end of the investigation when I really started watching the videos, because it just didn't make any sense that there was no dope talk on phone calls, there was no dope talk on the videos. To me, it didn't make sense. And at that time, I started raising a few issues with it. You know, I wasn't overly concerned, but I was beginning to get concerned about it.
Did the Attorney General's office or the Commonwealth Attorney have any similar concerns that were expressed to you?
I don't remember if we talked to the Commonwealth Attorney about it at first. The Attorney General's investigator, William Stewart, actually, we talked about Silas Whitehead, who was a detective with me, and Jason Snellen, who was the secondary detective, had talked about it, and Jason had expressed a lot of concern about it. Silas felt that we had enough. William Stewart seemed to think that we didn't have anything. And that pretty much toward the end of that's when we decided we were going to offer her a polygraph. And when she went to take the polygraph, she refused to take the polygraph, said that she had a pacemaker or a defibrillator. Well, I think it was a pacemaker installed. And she said she'd had it installed on her lower right buttocks.
Yeah, that's sustained.
Sheriff, at some point, was there a meeting or a discussion with Judge Allred about where the subject of the Grisham investigation came up?
One time, yes, sir.
Tell us where that occurred, when it occurred, and what you recall about that conversation.
If I recall correctly, he came around the corner coming from the Justice Center. Myself and Chief Deputy Yeard were standing outside, and as always, Judge Allred pulled up. You know, he spoke with everyone. I mean, very friendly. And, we just small talked, and then it popped up. It came up in my head. I need to ask about a continuance on Melissa Hensley, and I asked about continuance. And you know, he just asked. He said, "Who she doing any good for you?" And I said, "Yes, sir. We got some people up Kaywood, and you know, we're looking at some other people, some pretty bigger, you know, what we consider bigger people, and we might have a big fish or two on the hook." And he said, "Like who?" And I said, "Well, you know, just some big fish." And well, like, you know, he a little bit insistent, which was a little our character, but you know, how would I say it? He wasn't like demanding, "I want to know who." It was, you know, like who is it? And I said, "Joe Grisham." And he said, "I don't believe you." I said, "Yep, we've got it on video. We've got one video." And he said, "Well, I want to see this." I said, "You sure?" He said, "Yeah." So we walked inside the office, and I couldn't get to play on my computer, so Chief Deputy Yeard got the SD card that we insert into the little DVRs that was part of the camera system, and brought it down, and we watched the briefing, the prep of the tape, and then I fast-forwarded through because it shows the purse sitting in her lap, and it's just staring up, or it's not staring, the camera's pointed up through the windshield at the sky, and you see trees going by. There's no anything drug related to it. I fast forward up to where she goes into his office, and then we go watch through that. I don't remember if we watched the debrief or not. I think he may have watched the debrief. And before we started watching the video, when Winston, we call my Chief Deputy Wayne Winston is his name, when he handed me the SD card, he said, "Judge, are you sure?"
Sustained.
What did Judge Allred say during the course of this meeting? That's what I'm interested in.
He stated he would have to recuse from the case.
Did you or anyone else who was present at the meeting express any concerns when Judge Allred asked to see the tape?
Chief Deputy Yeary did.
What did he say?
He just...
Did you have any reservations about Judge Allred watching the tape?
I knew it wasn't normal practice, but, you know, he's the circuit judge. He wanted to see it, and I needed a continuance on my case.
Did he provide that continuance from Ms. Hensley?
Yes, sir, which he had done on other cases.
Was there any, in this, if I understand your testimony correctly, this was not like a scheduled meeting
No, sir. No, sir.
Did Judge Allred ever ask you, strike that, did anyone at this meeting ever ask for a search warrant or an arrest warrant that they needed Judge Allred to sign?
At that meeting?
Yes, sir.
No, I don't think so.
At that point of the investigation, was there any discussion in your office about the need to secure an arrest warrant or search warrant on the Grisham investigation?
I don't remember if we spoke about a search warrant or not. We may have for Grisham's office, but I honestly don't remember.
But it wasn't discussed at this meeting with Judge Allred that you've told us about?
I don't think so.
Were you involved at all in any discussions about whether to present this case involving Joe Grisham to a special grand jury?
Yes, sir.
Tell us what you know about that.
I think it was April 22nd of 2010, the day that the grand jury order came down, which I think Henry and I had said that he and the judge had spoke about it before. And it was the 22nd, which was, I think it was a Thursday, because Friday evening I actually had the order handed to me by one of the Justice Center staff. I read it and I thought, well, that's what Henry and the judge decided, then so be it. And it just happens the judge calls over wanting to know about a bench warrant on a drug court participant. And we were checking that out. I got onto the phone. I said, Judge, I just got my grand jury order. He said, yes, sir. He said, Sheriff, he said, Henry and I have discussed this, and we need to present this to a grand jury. People in Harlan County need to see what's going on. They need to know what's going on. And if we can't see the grand jury in Harlan County, we'll have to do one in Bale County. And I said, well, if that's what you and Henry's decided, I said, but I don't think I've got that good of a case. And he said, well, he said, from everything Silas told me, from what I've seen on those videos, it makes me sick. And I said, all right then. I mean, just the grand jury order was already done. There's no need to argue about it.
Let me show you that grand jury order. Let me show you what we marked. Exhibit number 11, Judge, the grand jury order. This is exhibit number 11. Is that the order that you received on Friday?
Yes, sir, I believe it is.
Had you ever seen an order entered like that before?
No, sir, but we don't do any special grand juries in Harlan either.
Did you think it was odd that the target of the grand jury investigation was identified and specified in the order?
I thought it was odd, but I didn't know if it needed to be or not.
Were you present before we move on to the next topic, did you draw any conclusions or form any opinions as to why Judge Allred may have entered that order?
Objection, cause for speculation, part of the witness without foundation as an expert.
He can answer if he formed an opinion.
I thought it was so strange to do it right before the election, because that was one of the things I really didn't want to do, was present it before the election. But you know, it was a primary election that year, and I didn't want to be accused of influencing the election, but it was there, and I had to deal with it.
Were you aware of who was running in the election for Judge Executive?
Yes, sir.
Who?
Judge Grisham was running for election. Sean Miller and Denny Pace.
And are you familiar with any relationship between Mr. Pace and Judge Allred?
I believe they're cousins, something like that.
Were you present in the Harlan County Courthouse on Monday, May the 3rd? When the case was presented to the regular grand jury?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Tell us what you recall happening that day.
Over at the Justice Center?
Yes, sir.
Henry and I decided to present it that morning, and I went and got my detectives, said, get your gear and get your case. We're going to the grand jury on Joe Gresham. And went over to the Justice Center, went to the third floor to the courtroom C where the grand jury is usually held. Went in, we milled around a few minutes, waiting for all the grand jury participants to get there, the jurors. And at one point, I believe that Judge Allred's wife had went in the back, and a few minutes later, I heard some loud noises. But Judge is always talking to people. Hey, how y'all doing? Stuff like that. And he's a little loud when he says it, and he's not. What I'm saying? It's not like it's uncommon to hear loud noises coming out of the hallway. So didn't think much about it. A few minutes later, Ed Taylor, who's a captain in charge of security over at the Justice Center, he came in and said that Henry and Russell just got into an argument.
Without saying what was said, would prompt. Go ahead.
Anyways, we were standing in the ante-room or the conference room next to the courtroom C, and I was on the phone with William Stewart from the Attorney General's office to let him know that we were presenting it, to give him kind of a heads up, to let him know we may be called, and as a professional courtesy in case the media started to call them and call the AG's office so they'd be aware of what was going on. And Judge Allred came into the ante-room or the conference room, whatever you want to call it, and was yelling at Sharif Gandy, asking him why he was presenting this case, or why we were presenting this case today. And Sharif told me I had to ask Henry. And he said, well, I want to know what the problem is. And he said, you have to ask Henry. And he said, I'll have the FBI here on every one of you. And he said, gentlemen, if any of you go in there and perjure yourself, I'll be the one to determine if you perjure yourself or not. He said, you'll be prosecuted.
How did you react to that?
I was surprised, but I was on the phone, and I was trying to talk to this man to let him know what's going on. I was surprised, a little shocked, because the judge had never been out of the way with any of us. It just kind of surprised me.
How did your men react from what you could see?
I'm assuming they were surprised. I really didn't look at them. I was trying to hold a conversation on the telephone and not lose the connection, because in the building you don't have real good service.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea why Judge Allred came in and made those statements to you and your men?
No, sir.
Then later that day, did Judge Allred take any other action involving your access to the courthouse?
Not my access, no.
Tell me what happened.
Not mine, sir.
Okay.
I was informed that Henry Johnson was to be escorted to the back of the building and out through the secured area to his vehicle, that his access was going to be revoked that day, or was revoked by Captain Ed Taylor. He informed me of that.
Do you recall an occasion a couple of years ago where Judge Allred contacted you about an individual named James Howard?
Yes, sir.
Tell us what you recall about that.
Basically, called me when we come over and talk to him about gambling machines. I believe he said some lady had complained to him that her husband had spent his whole paycheck in one of those poker machines, cherry machines, and he wanted me to investigate it. And that he actually told me some of the workings of it. That they keep, I think he said they keep money in a little box, or like a lockbox thing under the cash drawer or under the counter, and that basically I think if you get so many tickets it pays so much, and that we could seize probably everything in there, because there's no way to determine which cash is which, if which came from the machines as illegal proceeds and which didn't. And the judge asked me to do it, so I started trying to figure out a way to do it. The only problem I have is I have to answer to the auditor, and it'd be hard for me to explain why I put all that money into a poker machine, because I can't play poker. I'll be first to tell you, I'm not a card player, and I don't trust any of my men enough to start dropping money into a machine that we may or may not get back, and me try to figure out how to justify it. But state police ended up taking the lead on it and took off with it and made some cases with it.
When Judge Allred contacted you about this, do you identify the gas stations or Mr. Howard in particular?
he said the lady has complained that it was at James Harrod's gas station. He wanted me to look into them.
To your knowledge, did Judge Allred then what happened to Mr. Howard as a result of that investigation, to your knowledge?
I believe him, Don Childers, and I think there was a third man. I'm not sure if there was a third man or not, but I believe there was. They were indicted. State police indicted them.
And who presided in the case?
I believe Judge Allred did.
During the course of this conversation that you had with Judge Allred, did he suggest or ask you to see if you could seize these machines?
Well, we would have to seize them. He may have mentioned it. I don't really remember, but we would have seized them because they were eventually seized.
Do you know a Wallace Smith?
Yes, sir.
Who is he?
He is a friend of my friend, Bill Balls, and Wallace worked as an informant for us. A few months after I took office, he started feeding us information, and he gave us a lot of information, a lot of good solid information that we actually had obtained a lot of arrests for. And we used him as an informant for a long time. And, one day, Judge calls me and says that we have he wanted to talk to me about Wallace, that he'd been told by several people that he was dealing dope. And at this time, I actually grew suspicious that he probably was. And he told me that I needed to find out if he's dealing dope. He is, get him in jail. And I began an investigation on him. And we ended up making I think 2 buys, or 2 or 3 buys. We made a few buys. And one definitely was from Wallace. One was from his brother-in-law, I believe, in Wallace's yard, where he referenced Wallace being gone and would be back later. And we ended up indicting 4 or 5 out of that. I think 5.
When Judge Allred called you about Wallace Smith and asked you to do what you just described, did you tell him about what Wallace Smith was doing for the sheriff's office?
I believe I did. I'm not sure if I did or not, but I'm pretty sure I did. Good informants are hard to get, and he actually he didn't do hand-to-hand buys for us. He was an informational informant, and he gave us pretty good information. Like I said, I can't say for sure if I told Judge Allred or not, but I probably did.
And did your office look into it as Judge Allred requested?
I'm sorry?
Did your office investigate and take action as Judge Allred requested?
Yes, sir.
And, Mr. Smith was charged?
Yes, sir.
Who presided in this case?
Judge Allred did.
And was Mr. Smith sentenced?
Yes, sir.
What was his term?
I don't really know exactly the term. I think he took a 7-year hit, but he served 180 or some odd day. I'm not sure exactly how long he was in jail, but I think it was a 7-year hit. I think he pled to the trafficking first, and I think there was engaged in organized crime that was dismissed as part of the plea agreement. I'm almost sure we charged him with engaged in organized crime because there was him, his brother-in-law, there were several others.
1 second, please, Mr. Chairman.
That's fine.
Just a follow-up question, Sheriff, on the Grisham matter.
Yes, sir.
Do you know, were you involved in, and do you know why it was decided to present the investigation to the regular grand jury?
Henry Johnson and I had talked. He called me on a Saturday, and I was in Chattanooga, Tennessee with my he's now 3, my 2-year-old. And he wanted me to come by the office and talk to him, and I said, well, I can't. I said, I can tomorrow. There's no way I can do it today. I'm in Tennessee. And from Harlan, Chattanooga, is about 4 hours. And I met with him the next day, and he said that he felt as though that an offer.
Sustained.
Sheriff, I'm just asking you, do you know why it was presented to the regular grand jury on May the 3rd?
To be fair to Judge Grisham, that the rumors were out there, so we knew different than what the rumors were saying. We knew that there was an investigation, but we knew that it wasn't a good, solid case.
At this point in time, when you talked with Commonwealth Attorney on the weekend just before May the 3rd, had there been media reports about the special grand jury order?
Yes, sir, I think there had, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll pass for cross.
Judge Ulrich, you may ask.
Thank you. Good morning, Sheriff.
Morning, sir.
We'll start, if you don't mind. I want to get something clear for the record. You're saying on the day that you alleged that I came and told you and Commonwealth Attorney Henry Johnson to get all the money, I didn't want him to leave Harlan County with any money. You're saying that there was $1.2 million was the total bail money that had been posted at that time, or $1 million in bail money had been posted at that time.
I think there was $1 million left. I'm not exactly sure, but I think.
So there was $1 million up and posted in bond money.
Yes, sir. I think so.
And then you said, I want to be clear about that, $1 million total in bond money at the time this discussion took place.
I think there was, yes, sir.
And then you said that you and the Commonwealth Attorney were waiting on Laurel Lundy to show up to have a plea discussion, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you said that Henry Johnson had contacted me via telephone and told about the potential plea discussion. Is that correct?
I think he did.
Okay. And that I showed up over at Mr. Johnson's office before Laurel Lundy got there, correct?
I believe you showed up before or right at the same time. I'm not sure exactly, but Lowell wasn't in the room.
Okay. Well, Laurel Lundy wasn't there, so it had to have been before Laurel Lundy got there, correct?
Yes, sir, I guess.
Okay. Now, is it your testimony, Sheriff, that you were not pressuring the Commonwealth Attorney to get money from this plea agreement for the chaplain's corps?
No, sir, I didn't say that.
Okay. Well, did you pressure the Commonwealth Attorney to get money from this plea agreement to go to the chaplain's corps?
No, sir, because none of the money from forfeiture could have went to the chaplain corps. There's no way I could have
Forget
done
about
that.
the forfeiture. That's something separate. That's divided by statute, as you well know.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm talking about the donation aspect of this plea agreement. Well, the $500,000 was eventually donated. Did you pressure the Commonwealth Attorney to go along with cash money from that donation going to your chaplain's corps?
No, sir, I did not.
You never did that.
I never pressured anyone.
Did you ask him?
I mentioned it to Henry after it was done, yes, sir.
After it was done?
I'm pretty sure it was after it was done.
You never requested it during the time plea negotiations were going on?
I don't think I did. I may have. I'm not going to sit here and say absolutely I did not. But when Lowell mentioned charitable organizations, I mentioned the chaplain program. Yes, sir, I did. I'm sure I did.
I'm asking you specifically, did you ask the Commonwealth Attorney prior to the plea being resolved for money to go to the chaplain's corps?
I may have.
How many times did you mention that?
I don't know.
Okay. Now, were you a board member on the nonprofit Chaplain's Corps organization?
Yes, sir.
Were you a board member on the nonprofit Chaplain's Corps organization at the time this plea agreement was worked out?
Yes, I believe I was. I believe I was. I know I'm on the the executive board. I'm not on the board of directors.
And who else was on this board of directors with you at this time?
I can't remember who I was on board of directors.
Was Bill Ball one?
I believe Bill Ball. I believe Don Smith. I believe, I think at that time Nick Noe might have been and Kerry Johnson might have been. I'm not sure who all were at that time.
Now, did Bill Ball ever pressure you to get money for the Chaplain's Corps out of this plea agreement?
No, sir.
Do you recall telling me, you approaching me and telling me that the Chaplain's Corps was mad at me because that money didn't go to the Chaplain's Corps?
No, sir, I don't remember telling you that.
Now, is it your testimony here today that when Judge Grisham brought up the $50,000 donation for the chaplain's corps at the fiscal court meeting, is it your testimony here today that Joe Grisham, it was his idea to bring that up at that meeting?
Joe brought it up at the chaplain building to myself and Bill, and Joe said that he was going to bring it up to the fiscal court meeting. And we talked about it down at the building, and I told him that he needed to run it by you because you had final say-so over the money.
Well, let me ask you the question again, and maybe I can get you to answer it this way.
I'm sorry, sir.
You didn't bring it up to Joe Grisham about the donation being brought up to the fiscal court meeting. It was his idea to bring it up. That's your testimony here today.
It was his idea when we talked about it, and then I mentioned it to him that morning before the meeting. I asked him, are you sure you're going to do this?
Are you sure you didn't catch him as he was going up the stairway to the fiscal court meeting and say, hey, we want this $50,000 from the chaplain's court, Judge?
I didn't say that to him. I just told you that I went upstairs. When we went upstairs right before the meeting, I asked him, was he sure he wanted to do that?
Was he sure he wanted to do that was what you asked him?
Yes, sir.
You didn't ask him, hey, just bring it up on the stairs. We want you to do this.
No, I asked him, was he
Okay.
sure he wanted to do it?
Okay. Now, this was in January of 2011, correct?
I believe.
2010, right? January 2010, correct?
Yes, sir. It had to be 2010, yes, sir.
Was your investigation of Joe Grisham still ongoing at that time?
Yes, it had to be, yes, sir.
Okay. And this meeting took place on January the 11th of 2010, didn't it?
The fiscal court meeting?
Yes.
I believe it probably did.
Or around that time period.
Yes, sir. I'm not sure the date. I'd have to look at the calendar. It's usually the third Thursday of the month.
And since we're on that subject, let's talk about that. It was your office that initiated the investigation of Joe Grisham, correct?
Yes, sir.
It was your detectives that put a camera on Miss Hensley and sent her into Judge Executive's office, correct?
Yes, sir.
You did that long before you ever talked to me about this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
You did it with the full knowledge of Melissa Hensley's history, didn't you, Sheriff?
I didn't know her entire history, no, sir.
It's your testimony here today as a law enforcement officer in Harlan County, Sheriff, that you did not know about Melissa Hensley's reputation.
I knew about her reputation as being, how can I say it gingerly, a loose woman. I didn't know that she was a compulsive liar, though.
How long have you been a police officer?
Just a little over 20 years.
Were you academy trained?
Yes, sir.
And what academy did you complete?
The Kentucky Department of Criminal Justice Training in Richmond, Kentucky, July of 1994.
Have you had to do numerous follow-up trainings?
Yes, sir.
How many hours of follow-up training do you have?
Oh, my goodness, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. It's a minimum of 40 hours a year, and I try to do extra training every year. I couldn't give you an exact.
You have a lot of experience in working with narcotics investigations?
Pretty decent amount, yes, sir.
And do you have a lot of experience in working in law enforcement in general?
Yes, sir, I'd like to think so.
Based upon your training, experience, and expertise in this area, can you explain to me what area of training, and in any area of that training, were you trained to discuss confidential information of an investigation with political opponents of the Judge Executive of Harlan County?
I've not been trained to, one, I'm not an expert in that area. Two, the only person that I've discussed it with was Denny Pace, and that's when Denny brought it to my attention at the Cole rally. He came to me and he asked me, he said, when you...
Objection hearsay, Your Honor. Asking about his expertise and training. He's attempting to avoid their question.
Objection. Mischaracterization.
He's answering your question, Judge. You asked him a question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. We were at a Cole rally after the Christmas parade. Denny came up to me and said, He said, when are you gonna get Joe? Actually, Otis Doan, myself, and Denny were standing there talking. We took a picture. Someone took a picture of us. Stood there and talked a few minutes. Otis meandered around, started talking to someone else. He said, when you gonna get Joe? I said, what? He said, I was a little surprised. He said, when you gonna get Joe? I stood there a second. I said, like that. I just kind of didn't know what to say at first. And he said, I know all about it, and Russell didn't tell me. I said, well, how do you know Russell knew? He said, I've got people out here that tell me stuff. And I said, all right. And we talked about it. Then he called me at the house one time and asked me about it. And we ran into each other on the street, and he asked me about it and talked about it. There's no need to deny it because he's already there. He knows it. Someone had told him.
So is it your testimony here today, under oath, the only person you told about that was Denny Pace, political opponent of Judge Executive Christian?
No, sir. Abe Bailey came to me also and talked to me about it.
What about Sean Miller? Did you call him to your office and tell him about it?
No, sir, I did not. Sean
Your
came to me.
testimony under oath, you didn't do this.
No, sir. Sean came to me and asked me about it. He point blank asked me about it.
Crowley Forster. Did you tell Crowley Forster about it?
No, sir, I did not tell Crowley Forster about it.
Did you tell Jonathan Pope about it?
No, sir, I'd have no reason to tell Jonathan Pope about it.
He was a magistrate's candidate against Paul Caldwell, wasn't he?
I believe, yes, sir, he was, yeah.
Was Paul Caldwell involved in the initial steps of this investigation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you make comments to Mr. Jonathan Pope about the potential to take care of Paul Caldwell in your investigation?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you tell you didn't tell any of those folks what you're testifying to? Did you tell Jack Maynard about it?
Objection, Mr. Chairman. Who the sheriff may have talked to about this investigation is not relevant to the charges against Judge Alden.
Can you explain what?
Yes, sir, I can explain. Okay.
What does this have to do with the
Okay.
charge?
The allegation against me is that I did this for a political purpose. If you have a sitting sheriff who initiated the investigation, who brought in political opponents of the judge executive and told them about it, and other political candidates about it, it shows that he had the motive to do this, to start the whole investigation and to present it in such a way as to help himself politically and to hurt others. He also, would be my ultimate argument in this case, that the reason all this came to light is the sheriff, after he did these things, attempted to dump his political mess on me. That's exactly what I'm arguing.
But what does that have to do with whether or not you did what the charges say you did?
The charges have alleged that I convened a special grand jury for political purposes. It is not as simple as alleging that I had a distant cousin that was running for that office. You have to establish what I was doing it for. If I did it in a good faith legal basis, I'm not subject to judicial discipline and an ethics proceeding. This is part of the allegations they made. They made the allegation by asserting that it was for an attempt to help a distant cousin of mine. I have the right to put on evidence to show the commission an alternate theory of what happened in this case, to explain what happened in this grand jury case. And that's what I'm attempting to do.
Proceed.
Okay. So you've answered that you did, your testimony is you did not tell Sean Miller about the investigation.
Correct, sir.
And your testimony is you did not tell Crowley Forster about the investigation.
No, sir, I didn't.
And your testimony is you did not tell Jonathan Pope about the investigation.
No, sir.
Okay. When you sign up an informant to work for you, Sheriff, do you make them sign an agreement?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did Miss Hensley sign an agreement?
Yes, sir.
What does this agreement normally say?
That they're basically, we do a background check on them. They allow us to do a background check. They allow us to put a recorder on them, recording devices, allow us to record phone calls pertinent to those cases. They're not allowed to conduct their own investigations or act as a law enforcement officer. I can't remember everything that's in.
So do they obey the law while they're working for you? Is that one
Basically,
of them?
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
To be honest and truthful?
Yes, sir.
Now, Melissa Hensley, according to the previous testimony, she was working for you, and you sent her into the judge executive's office, correct?
Yes, sir.
And she brought back controlled substances, did she?
Yes, sir.
How many controlled substances total did she bring back?
I can't give you an exact number. Though I think, and I'm just guessing because I don't have the case report in front of me. I think.
We got a case report in there.
Okay.
Would you like to say this?
Yes, sir.
South White. Oh, by the way, Detective Whiting still work for you?
No, sir.
Did you fire him?
No, sir.
You didn't fire him?
No, sir, I didn't fire him.
You anticipate, has he been served with a subpoena to testify here today?
Yes, sir.
Is he going to testify today?
I don't know.
Is he one of your witnesses? South Whiting, one of your witnesses.
He's been released.
Okay. Do you know why he's been released?
No, sir.
He was the lead case officer in this investigation, wasn't he?
Yes, sir.
Now, you testified that, let you finish that question first. How many controlled substances were taken back to your office by this informant?
I believe 6 is what I counted, 5 or 6. Sir.
And were any of them OxyContin?
Hold on one second. No, sir, I don't think any of them were OxyContin. I believe they were lower tabs, most of them.
Would you look at the confirmed lab reports in the back of the
Yes, sir.
office there? Are you sure before you ask that question?
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with the lab reports from the Kentucky State Police Crime Lab?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
One lab report state that, yes, sir, okay, one blue tablet marked A215, which was oxycodone. Yes, sir.
Okay.
You read the other lab reports?
Was Ms. Hensley charged with possession of controlled substance?
No, sir.
Based upon the agreement she signs to work with you, the sheriff's office, did she satisfy her requirements in that agreement in this case involving Joe Grisham?
No, sir.
Were you aware that she was probated by the Commonwealth Attorney?
Yes, sir.
Did anybody from your office sign off on that agreement?
I may have. I don't know if anyone else did or not. I'd have to see it.
We can let you see.
I may have. I don't know. I probably did.
What exhibit is that, Judge?
That's exhibit number H.
H. Thank you.
So she was probated, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what was the Commonwealth Attorney put down as a reason for that?
This count worked with her 4 years, total of 4 years. Probated due to assistance given to law enforcement. Probated for 3 years. First year supervised, second year unsupervised, third year unsupervised.
So she was probated for the cooperation that she gave you all?
Yes, sir.
Would you say that she cooperated with you all?
She cooperated, but not the results we wanted.
What were the results you wanted?
Well, we wanted to make solid buys and be able to prosecute people for dealing drugs in Harlan County.
Well, if it was determined that those drugs did not come from the judge executive, where did she get the drugs?
We determined that we couldn't tell where they came from, if they actually came from the judge or not for sure. And we couldn't prove that she didn't have them on her. We weren't sure where they came from.
Didn't your
Videos
sister?
didn't show it.
Doesn't your sister work for the sheriff's department?
Yes, sir.
Didn't she search her?
I think she searched her definitely once. I don't know sure all 3 times, but probably she strip searched her. I know one time for sure.
Well, she was strip searched before she left, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was she followed?
Yes, sir.
Was she strip searched when she got back?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. Now, in regard to Wallace Smith,
Yes, sir.
you said he was a friend of a friend.
Yes, sir.
Who was he a friend of?
Bill Law.
Okay. How long has he been a friend of Bill Ball, to the best of your knowledge?
10, 15 years maybe, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't.
Now, on Mr. Wallace Smith, this is going to be what's my next exhibit number, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor? Jay? Thank you, sir.
What is the exhibit, Judge?
It's going to be certified copies of the entire file of Wallace Smith's criminal case.
From the court, a case file?
Yes, sir, from the Harlan Circuit Court.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir. Now, Wallace Smith was eventually indicted on a criminal syndicate, correct?
I believe so, yes, sir.
And you what's marked as responsibility J.
Yes, sir.
And how many people were indicted with him in this criminal syndicate?
It would probably have to be a minimum of 5 to have a syndicate.
Would you read the names inside Wallace Smith?
Take me a second to find them. Okay. Wallace Vincent Smith, Amy Cherish Wright, Michael Bowling, David Z. Wright, Jerry Freeman, and Linda Sue Bowling.
There were no conversations between me and you involved in those other people?
No, sir.
How many appeals total came out of your investigation of that criminal syndicate involving Wallace Smith?
Is it in here? I wouldn't.
Way up here.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Judge.
Is there an objection on relevancy grounds, Mr. Chairman?
Your Honor, my grounds exploring this are that it's alleged that I had a conversation where I basically told him he better investigate Wallace Smith. My position is, and my defense is, that Wallace Smith was a known open drug dealer who was a friend of Bill Ball, who works for the sheriff's office. This false allegation is made in retaliation because I would not probate, nor would I shock probate, Wallace Smith, the close friend of Bill Ball, that I will elicit testimony, came to my office to do this. I'm simply establishing the connection.
That's fine, Judge.
Thank
You can ask.
Thank you. That instruction order talks about a number of appeals in that case.
Yes, sir.
If you would, please read the number of appeals.
Item B, 111 blue oblong marked M361 on one side and scored on the other. Item C, 12 white oblong pills marked M363 on one side and scored on the other. Item D is 93 oblong pills marked M361 on one side and scored on the other. Item E, 28 round white pills marked 2410V as in Victor. Item F, 7 round white pills marked M as in Mary on one side and T as in Tom, 7 on the other. Item G is 19 oblong pills marked 377.
So there's a total of 270 appeals came out of that investigation.
Yes, sir.
Would you consider that a pretty significant drug trafficking case?
Yes, sir.
Now, was it a solid case?
I felt it was pretty solid. Most of the pills were found in prescription bottles that were his when we executed a search warrant on his house, and the pill counts were pretty close to right.
Did you, the buy that you had off him, was it a video buy?
I don't remember if it's video or audio.
Where did the buy take place at?
I think one took place at Dairy Queen. I think one or two took place at his house, not in his residence.
He being who?
Wallace was definitely at Dairy Queen. I think there was one at his house.
His house being whose
Wallace,
house?
I'm sorry, sir.
Wallace who?
Wallace Smith, sir.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Now, Sheriff, do you maintain a website at the called the Harlan County Sheriff's Office website?
Yes, sir.
And on that website, do you put press clippings and things about raids and things of that nature on there?
Yes, sir. We're not up to date. Yes, sir.
Okay. Has it been one of your pillars of your enforcement as the Sheriff of Harlan County, law enforcement, to sell, confiscate, and sell items from drug dealers?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you've done that numerous times, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This would be K. There's an article on the website, and response exhibit K, if you would. It's entitled, Auction Helps War on Drugs.
Yes, sir.
If you would, read the last paragraph of that article posted on the website.
Last paragraph, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There is an executive order that cuts it down to where people don't have to spend so much time in jail. We may not be able to do anything about how long somebody stays in jail, but we can sure do something about all the toys that they buy from preying on the souls of the people of Harlan County.
Did you seize any property from Wallace Smith's home,
Objection, relevancy.
Your Honor?
The issue of Wallace Smith, what he did is irrelevant. The charge before is his contact with, the charge before the commission is Judge Allred's contact with the sheriff advocating for an investigation and indictment of Mr. Smith, and then is presiding over the case. The underlying facts of the Wallace Smith case are irrelevant to this proceeding.
Judge, I think he's correct.
Let me-
The issue is, did you do that?
Can I respond?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely, the ultimate issue is that, did I do it? But the evidence against me is the testimony of the sheriff. It is his word versus my word. What I'm attempting to do is establish a reason the sheriff would lie. I'm attempting to establish motive. I'm attempting to establish a relationship between this man and a deviation of the standard of conduct that the sheriff did in regard to Wallace Smith to prove that there was a different relationship between him and this individual here. I think I'm entitled to explore that to establish a reason why he would lie. That's what I'm doing.
I'm trying to remember, Mr. Mando, if you asked Judge Allred if he talked to the sheriff about Wallace Smith yesterday, and I don't recall that you did ask.
I don't believe I did ask him about that.
All right, then I'm going to let it go.
Now,
Yes, sir.
did you seize anything from Wallace Smith's home?
I don't know if we did or not. Probably, I don't think we did. I don't think we did.
You did or you didn't seize something from his home?
I don't remember if we did or not. We've seized a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of cases where we don't seize. Depends if people owe on, like they've got large liens against stuff. I've gotten to where, we were seizing a lot of stuff that had liens on it. We were even up having to get a lot of stuff back, so I don't know if I did or not. I don't remember.
But you don't
Probably
remember
not.
seizing and selling anything of Wallace Smith's, do you?
No, sir, I don't. No, sir.
And I would have had to sign a forfeiture order, wouldn't
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I? And, let me have to, where's that case file at? Would you search that case file?
Sorry, Look for what, sir?
A forfeiture order, property seized in this dwellings.
Judge, in order to speed this up, obviously the file's coming in. Is there a forfeiture order in there? If it's not, let's just move this
I don't
along.
know that I can put that into evidence. I don't know that I can do that. But
It's in evidence. Is there a forfeiture order in there?
I'm
or
not
not?
aware of one in there, no.
Then let's move on.
Yes, sir.
We've got the record.
Okay. Now, in regard to you being at the courthouse, it's your testimony that you were in the side room off the witness waiting room the day that the special grand jury, or rather the matter was presented, Joe Grisham matter was presented to the regular grand jury. It's your testimony that you were in that room on the side room there with all the other people witnesses waiting to testify. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Who was in that room?
Detective Tim Hensley, retired now, Detective Tim Hensley, Kentucky State Police, Sharif Gandy, Dexter Day, I believe Silas Whitehead was in there. I don't know if there's anyone else from my office there, but that was pretty much it that I can remember. I think Heather Dickinson might have been in there from Henry Johnson's office. I'm not sure, but I know Sharif, Dexter, Silas, and Tim Hensley were.
Now, you testified earlier that Dexter Day was initially with Silas Whitehead. Was that on the first buy, or what are you talking about?
That was when he and Silas were working her in the Kaywood area. I don't think Dexter was on any of the Joe Grisham cases. He may have been, but I don't think he was.
So he didn't, Dexter Day had nothing to do with the Joe Grisham case when it initiated?
No, not when we actually went to Joe's. I don't think he did. He may have been with him, he may not have. But it's a standard practice that we have at least two, and sometimes the other detective will go with them.
The police report, Silas Whitehead, would it reflect that Dexter Day was with him on the first time?
It would, yes, if he should. It says on 9/2/2009, Miss Hensley was at her house. Detective Jason Snell and Deputy Marilyn Lickford and myself, which is Detective Silas Whitehead. It doesn't mention Dexter in here, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Isn't it true, Sheriff, that you came into my office with Bill Ball while Wallace Smith's case was pending? Bill Ball attempted to ex parte me and asked for probation for Wallace Smith, and I stopped him, and I put you and him out of my office.
I don't remember Bill being there. I came over to your office. I remember I came over to the office, and I actually had called you that morning and asked you, could I come over and speak to you? And you said, as long as it's not about Wallace Smith. And I think we were on speakerphone with, I think Bill was in the office with me. And I said, that's what it's about. And he said, well, come on over, Sheriff. You're welcome anytime. And I came over. I don't think Bill was with me, Judge. And I came over and I said, the family's aggravating me to death because he did work as an informant and won't know if you consider short probation. You said, absolutely not. I will not consider it. And you was cordial. And I said, all right, thank you, Judge. You got him left. I mean, he was very cordial about it. You wasn't out of line.
Do you remember or not if Bill Ball was with you?
No, sir, I don't remember if he was with me. I don't think he was with me.
You don't remember going like this when he started talking?
Judge, we've been over the office several times on other things. I mean, he may have been with me one time. I don't know. He may have. But I remember.
I definitely stopped you from talking and sent you out of my office, didn't I?
Yes, sir, you stopped me from talking. Yes, sir, you asked me to. You told me you would not consider it at all.
And I stopped Bill Ball from talking and sent him out of my office. In fact, wasn't it true that you weren't doing any talking at all? Bill Ball was the one trying to talk, and I put him out of my office.
Objection.
He can answer.
Okay, I'm sorry, sir. Last
Isn't
part.
it true that Bill Ball was the one doing the talking, and you were sitting there going like this, and I looked at you amazed that this would go on, and I said, get out of my office. Don't come over here and try to ex parte me on the case.
I don't remember you saying that. I don't remember that happening. But if you said we came over there, Judge, because we've been over a lot.
Okay. Do you remember after Wallace Smith was sentenced, the plea was reached, and he was sent to penitentiary? Do you remember calling my office subsequent to his sentencing on speakerphone?
Yes, sir, that's what it said.
No. I was talking about the previous meeting before he was sentenced is what I was asking you about.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't remember a previous meeting, but yeah, I remember calling you on speakerphone. I came over and you told me absolutely not. And that was after he was sentenced.
Isn't it true that you called me on a speakerphone attempting to try to discuss and get probation for Wallace Smith after he was sentenced and had me on speakerphone?
Yes, sir.
And didn't I tell you immediately that I didn't know what you were talking about?
No, sir, I don't remember you saying that. I told you I had you on speakerphone with Bill Ball, and we were sitting there, and that Wallace's family, and you said, I don't want to talk about it. I said, well, can I come over and talk to you? You said yes, and I actually came to your office to talk to you, and you told me no, you would not consider it.
I told you, isn't it true? I told you absolutely not. I wouldn't talk about it. Don't try to talk to me about this case. And quit calling my office. Is that true?
Yes, sir. When I got over, you told me you would not hear it. And I went and told his wife, who works for the circuit clerk, that I did what I said I'd do.
The investigation of Joe Grisham started by your office, correct?
Yes, sir.
All the detectives involved in it up until you contacted the Attorney General's office for your detectives, correct?
Yes, sir.
And they continued to work with the one AG detective, correct?
Yes, sir.
In fact, isn't it true on the day that I was over there at your office, I was there to sign an arrest warrant or a search warrant? Either one of those.
Which day?
The day that this issue came up
Which,
about the Joe Grisham investigation.
I don't remember if you was there to sign a search warrant or if you pulled up out front to go in to sign a search warrant. Yes, sir, you was. Yes, sir, you actually did. Yes, sir. Now that y'all think about it, yes, sir, you were there for a reason. You're right.
And
Yes, sir.
isn't it true that you had the Joe Grisham buy tape on your hard drive computer in your office?
Yes, sir, but I'd done a hard cleanup on my computer because I got a virus and it wouldn't play.
Is it your standard practice to put buy tapes on your hard drive in your office on your computer?
No, sir.
Is that the first time you've ever done that with a buy tape?
No, sir. No, sir. Leslie Stevens was the first time I've ever done it.
Isn't it normal procedure to leave the buy tape with the case file in evidence with the evidence on it?
It was in evidence. The actual SD card was in evidence.
But you had a copy of it on your hard drive in your office.
Yes, sir.
Wouldn't that make it easier to show people when they came in to talk to you?
I put it on my computer so in case it got lost, I'd have a copy of it, sir.
How many deputies have you fired since you've been sheriff?
Objection, relevancy.
It goes to the grounds of why future witnesses for the sheriff, when they testify, would have a legitimate reason to tell something that wasn't true, to maintain their employment. And I'm simply establishing a foundation, when I bring that issue up later on, that there have been numerous sheriff and deputies fired by the sheriff.
What does that have to do, unless we're going to get into why they were fired, and we're not going to
I
do
just want
that?
to know how many were fired,
But what difference does that make?
to show that this sheriff will fire any deputy. In my opinion, what I'll try to establish in this is reasons for their testimony that may come up.
Well,
You
sure.
fire him if they don't do what he says. It's that simple.
He can answer the number. We're not going to get into the names.
How many deputies you fired?
Give me a second. I can think of about 5 right off the top of my head.
Could it be more?
Give me a second. Thanks, sir. Yeah, it could probably be more, yes, sir. I think of 6. I'm not sure. I don't have the exact number on me. I have no way of knowing it without actually going looking at employment records.
One final question. Did your ex-father-in-law run against the judge executive?
Yes, sir.
No further questions. This witness. I would reserve the right to call him in my case, however.
That's fine. Mr. Mando, any redirect?
Just briefly, please, Mr. Chairman. Just so I can clarify a couple things. When you just indicated, Sheriff, that you recalled that Judge Allred had to sign a search warrant on the day that he viewed the videotapes in the Grisham matter, do you recall whether that search warrant was for another case or whether it had something to do with the Grisham case?
No, it had nothing to do with the Grisham case.
So there would have been no reason for him to review the videotape in order to execute a search warrant for the Grisham investigation.
Right.
Had Ms. Hensley cooperated with the Sheriff's Office on investigations in other cases besides Grisham?
Yes, sir.
Had she produced results in those cases?
Yes, sir.
With regard to the pills that were found or produced by Ms. Hensley during the course of the Grisham investigation, were there questions about where she got those pills?
Yes, sir. We couldn't completely confirm she'd got them from Judge Grisham. It was never seen on video. I mean, you couldn't actually see a pill transaction on video.
Was that one of the primary factors why you thought the case was weak?
That and when she would say something happened on video and we would, like, you do your prep, you do the video, then at the end of it, you do a debrief and you ask them, who did you get these pills from, or was it at a debrief? What she was saying in debrief did not match what was going on the video.
Thank you, Sheriff. That's all the questions I have.
Did y'all read anything further?
No further questions right now.
Any member of the commission? Judge Johnson.
Sheriff, in the Wallace Smith case,
Yes, ma'am.
what law enforcement agency did the investigation and the arrest?
With Wallace Smith,
Uh-huh.
the sheriff's office did.
Sheriff's office did it all?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have a question? Did that raise any questions?
Yes, sir.
Judge Allred. All right. Sheriff, you're free to go, although you have been requested to be available for Judge Allred in his case. I assume he will contact you if he needs you.
Yes.
All right.
Hang around today, and I may have to call you back this evening.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's take a break. It's 10:22. We'll come